Hey, Mitch.
Hey, Coach Molly, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you. It's been a
You
while.
too. Welcome. Happy Wednesday, veterans. Thanks so much for spending time with Mitch and I today. Before we get started, as kind of everybody trickles into this live, go ahead and go into the comments. Let us know what years you served, what branch you served in. Let's see how many branches we can get in those comments. If you are a VACI elite member, go ahead and you can give your coach a shout out in those comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I also love to see how many states we can get in these lives because it's kind of all over the place. So while we wait, let's sound off in the comments a little bit.
Yeah, welcome everyone. I might be a little biased. I'm an Army veteran, so I love to see how many Army veterans are in the Facebook Live, but welcome everybody.
And I am the proud wife of a Navy veteran, so I'm on the other side. Don't hold it against me, Mitch.
Never,
Oh, there
never.
you go. Already, Lance is sounding off. Army, 1996 to 99. He's coming
Love
at
it.
us from Georgia.
There we go.
We've got a Marine in the group. Mr. Antisocial. I love that screen name. That's awesome. Terry, all right, there's a Navy vet. Terry, 97 to 01. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today.
Oh, Terry, you're in Miami, Florida. Whew, I bet it's hot over there. It's even hot here in Wyoming, so I can't imagine over there in Florida. All right, Kevin, U.S. Navy, 87 to 91, 100% TDIU, watching in from Kansas. Awesome.
Love it.
Thanks for joining. Russ, another Navy vet, 69 to 73. Thank you for your service, sir. Oh, I don't know. Navy and Marines might be winning right now, Mitch.
You know, it's one team, it's one fight. Thank you for
Right,
your service,
exactly.
everybody.
Awesome. David from Navy, 91 to 94. He's in Chicago. I was born and raised in Michigan. Right over that lake. Air Force. Charles. Another Air Force, Robert, 71 to 77. Fantastic. Keep sounding off on those comments. While we get started here, we are going to we're going to have a really great topic for you. But before we actually get into the topic, I'd love for Mitch and I to kind of introduce ourselves and go over kind of a debrief. And then we'll go over that disclaimer. I know you guys saw it when you guys were coming in, but I'll go ahead and reiterate that as well. So I am veteran coach Molly Cruzen. I have been with VACI for almost 3 years now. And I will give credit where credit is due. My husband was actually the one that found VA Claims Insider when he was struggling with his claims. So I kind of have a unique perspective because I saw it work for him, and I wanted to serve veterans and help them get the VA disability that they truly deserve. And 3 years later, I'm still at this dream job. What about you, Mitch?
Yeah, thanks, Coach Molly. I'm Coach Mitch. I'm an Army veteran. Talk a little bit funny. I'm from Minnesota. You know it's bad if you're picking on yourself, right? But
True.
I retired from the Army a couple of years ago. As I went through the process, I really was lost. I was confused. I was fortunate to have some veteran battle buddies to give me as much sound advice as they could. But in the end, I was really disappointed with the process with disability compensations. I have a friend who actually had let me know about VA Claims Insider. And, it ended up being a perfect opportunity for me as I transition. An opportunity was presented to be able to come and work here. And I felt this calling inside to continue to help fellow veterans. I feel really blessed to be here with you today. And that's a little bit about me, Coach Molly.
Awesome. I always tell veterans too, VA Claims Insider comes into your life when you truly need it most. And I know that was true for my husband, and I know that it's true for a lot of the veterans that I work with, and for myself personally too. I felt I was a stay-at-home mom with my hands full with 2 little ones before I started here at VA Claims, and I really wanted to serve a community that was near and dear to my heart. And then this opportunity was kind of dropped in my lap, and here we are. So really, the VA Claims Insider has a special way of kind of, getting to you when you really need them most. So With that being said, let's actually go over that disclaimer before we jump into that topic. So, just as a reminder, we are not accredited agents, VSOs, attorneys, or any other entity recognized by the Department of Veteran Affairs, the VA, and we are not affiliated with the VA in any way. VA Claims Insider is an education based coaching and consulting company for disabled veterans exploring eligibility for increased VA disability benefits and who wish to learn more about that process. VA Claims Insider also connects veterans with a vetted independent medical professionals in our preferred provider medical examinations and independent medical opinions IMOs for a wide range of disability conditions. All right, Mitch, you want to go over a little bit about the elite program and the strategy, education, and medical evidence and how important that is?
Yeah, so the elite program, right? Some of the things we call it SEAM. We still kind of keep some of those acronyms going, right? But strategy, education, and medical evidence. What you really get with the elite service is you get that one-on-one coaching, strategy session. We talk with you on claim submissions. It is you who submits your claim. You have us through the whole process, though, from submitting the claim to that compensation and pension preparation. You have us there with you, right? I always say, they call us coaches, but I always say I'm team so and so because I'm really here for you, right? We do live classes via Zoom on VACI 1. There's 3 times a day that we have classes going on continually. It's really a community for veterans to come together, kind of like what we're doing here today on the Facebook Live. There's coffee with the coaches, really relaxed. It's an open forum for people. You get a lot of coaches in there so you can hear different perspectives. We do the mental health exam educational class, and we also do medical exam educational prep class. So very informative classes that are part of the elite program. If you have some interest in this, please do a discovery call. If you want to learn more, schedule a free discovery call to talk with one of our team members by going to vaclaims.help. Okay. If you need help, reach out to our organization at vaclaimsinsider.com. We would truly love to partner with you on your VA claim journey.
Absolutely. Our veteran ambassadors that do those discovery calls are absolutely fantastic. They are a wealth of information, and it's risk free. It's a free discovery call just to see if it's right. VA Claims Insider and the Elite program isn't right for everybody. And that's why it's so important for those veteran ambassadors to have that call with you to kind of explore your options, and if you are a good fit, then they'll go ahead and kind of walk you through those next steps. And you'll get paired up with a coach like, Mitch and I, and you'll kind of start your journey from there. All right. All right. So let's jump into the topic. We are talking all about PTSD and mental health today. So before I go any further, I do want to give a little bit of a warning. This is a sensitive and difficult topic to discuss, or to even listen to sometimes for a lot of veterans. If you find yourself in crisis, you don't have to go at this alone. You can connect with a veteran crisis line responder any time of day or night by calling this number that's on the screen right now, the 988, and selecting 1, or you can text the 838-255 number. Okay. I always encourage veterans, just put this in your phone. Sometimes when you are in crisis, your brain doesn't function and work as quick as you need it to. So if you have this number in your phone, and if you do need it, it's right there. You don't have to go and Google what is the crisis line. That's kind of the last thing that you want to be doing in crisis. So just put this number into your phone and please utilize it. All right. And please remember, we are not accredited agents, VSOs, attorneys, or any other medical professional. All right, so let's jump into it. So definition, most people know what PTSD stands for, but it does stand for post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a mental health condition that can develop after experiencing or witnessing a life-threatening event. These events can include combat exposure, military trauma, to include military sexual trauma or personal assault. They can include training accidents and other traumatic events. I will not be going over examples today, but just the general definitions of the different types of PTSD and the criteria that the VA is going to be using when actually looking over that PTSD claim when and if you do submit it. Okay. All right. Symptoms of PTSD can go anywhere from flashbacks to nightmares to severe anxiety and intrusive thoughts. Mitch, do you want to go into kind of the differences and similarities between PTSD and anxiety disorder within this claims process?
Yeah, thanks, Coach Molly. Is PTSD an anxiety disorder, right? There's overlapping symptoms, fear and stress. Unique symptoms to PTSD, I'll touch on, okay? Reliving a traumatic event, flashbacks or nightmares, avoiding things that remind you of an event, negative change in beliefs and feelings. Therefore, PTSD is categorized separately, but it's crucial to remember that if everyone's experiencing with PTSD is unique to the individual, and it might look different from one veteran to another. So, the unique experience of PTSD in veterans, there's three different types of PTSD that are categorized, right? There's combat PTSD, non-combat PTSD, and PTSD due to MST, military sexual trauma, right? A lot of people, when we look at PTSD, I think, at least speaking for myself, you kind of think combat PTSD. And what I would want you to know here today is really with PTSD, there's that traumatic event, right? No matter what the category it's under, there's a traumatic event that can be validated there. I know, Coach Molly, is there anything you want to touch on specifically with
Yeah,
connection?
I think you hit it right on the head with the combat PTSD. That's oftentimes when I'm speaking to a veteran, they said, "Well, I didn't serve in combat. How can I have PTSD if I didn't serve in combat?" And that's a misconception. There are different types of PTSDs and stressors, and all of those stressor events are valid. Now we'll go into the actual criteria into what the VA has set out with that PTSD stressor criteria that they are looking into to verify and validate that PTSD stressor event. But yes, it's really important to note that it does not have to be combat, and you do not have to have a combat badge or certificate on your DD-214 to actually qualify you for PTSD. Sometimes it definitely helps. So maybe give your DD-214 a look and see if those are on there, or if an event that you believe is your PTSD stressor event is listed on there. That can all help the VA verify that PTSD stressor event and hopefully get it service connected for you. All right. So now I want to go really over briefly on the what's called the DSM-5 PTSD criteria. And the reason Mitch and I aren't going to go a total deep dive into this is because this is the DSM-5 stands for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health, 5th edition. I know, thrilling stuff. We will not bore you with absolutely every single detail, but if you are curious on those details, we do have an amazing blog that'll be posted up here on the screen, and that does go into a lot of what we're going to be talking about today in even more depth. All right, but we want to make sure that we have some time at the end for questions in the comments and all of that good stuff. So I'm going to kind of breeze over it. And then if you do have more detailed questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments. And Mitch and I will try and answer them to the best of our abilities after we get through this discussion, okay? So this is the criteria that can qualify you for the PTSD diagnosis. So in my opinion, DSM-5 criteria is not as important to understand than it is to be able to speak to the service connection, that stressor event, if it's PTSD, or if maybe it's a secondary mental health, which we won't get into too much, but knowing what is causing or aggravating that underlying mental health condition and those symptoms that you're having, and being able to speak to the severity of your symptoms. In my opinion, that is going to be much, much, much more important than memorizing the DSM-5. Okay? Let the actual professionals that are trained on the DSM-5, let them put you through the questions that we're going to go over in a little bit, and make that distinguishing diagnosis. I had a mentor that here at VA Claims Insider say it doesn't necessarily matter what they diagnose you with. What really matters is that they service connect it, as well as give you the correct percentage for the severity of the condition. They can call it anything they want in terms of diagnosis, as long as they're doing it in the right way in terms of the criteria and the DSM-5. But it doesn't necessarily matter as much than it is to actually explain that severity and that service connection. Okay. So what are they going to be looking for? So the DSM-5 criteria will look at the following. They'll look at if you were exposed to a life-threatening event or witnessing one. Now, This is where we're going to get into a little bit of the PTSD stressor event criteria. We have an amazing blog on this as well, on vaclaimsinsider.com. That really goes into detail on what it is. But the definition of it is it involves exposed to death, threatened death, or actual threatened serious injury, or actual threatened sexual violence. That is the definition that the VA uses to qualify you for that PTSD stressor event. Okay, so give that a look if you're thinking about going this PTSD route for your claim. All right, so this could be, you're having flashbacks or nightmares, anxiety related to the traumatic event, maybe avoiding the reminders of the trauma, staying away from crowds, fireworks, all of that kind of thing. Maybe even people, self-isolation can be definitely a part of it. All right, changes in feelings and beliefs after the trauma, forgetting key parts of the actual traumatic event, having negative thoughts about yourself or others, blaming yourself for the event. Symptoms lasting more than a month, and affect your daily life. This is where the occupational and social impacts that Mitch and I will get into, that's going to be really important to understand. So not only are you having these symptoms, but what is the impact of these symptoms on your social as well as occupational life? So how does it impact you at work? Maybe you suffer from panic attacks. If you have a panic attack at work, what is the impact of that? Do you have to miss out on work? Did you get fired because you had a panic attack at work? All of those details and that context when talking about your mental health is really, really important for you to get rated properly for it in terms of percentage. All right. Changes in how you react. So easily angered, irritated, acting reckless. Maybe you were never a huge drinker, and after your event you started drinking, and maybe you got behind the wheel and acted recklessly, and that's really uncharacteristic for you. All right. And then your symptoms are not a result of another condition or medication. So when we're talking about PTSD or that direct service connection for mental health, there's not other factors, medication or conditions that are causing or aggravating it. All right. That goes into the criteria. And you are experiencing significant impairment in your social life, work life, or both areas of your life. All right. Now, it's important to note these symptoms sometimes don't show up right away. So it may take 6 months or more before you start to feel this way. A lot of veterans will come and we'll be in our strategy call, and they'll say, I've never seen a mental health professional, and I got discharged, a couple of decades ago. How is this going to work? Sometimes mental health in particular goes undiagnosed for years or decades. It's never too late. All right. It's situational based more than anything. All right. So if it doesn't show up, the full diagnostic criteria may not be met until at least 6 months have passed from when you first experienced the event. Now, this is not make or break. This is not correct for every single person. It's going to be different person to person and veteran to veteran. But this is just kind of generally. Sometimes it does take a little bit for everything to settle in and kind of come to a head. All right, Mitch, do you want to go over the ICD 10 for PTSD as well?
Sure, I got you. Thanks, Coach Molly. Doing awesome, ma'am. So the ICD-10, International Classification of Disease, the 10th edition, right? These ICD codes are used to classify disease and health conditions. You might see these codes listed on your decision letter following your diagnosis. If you want more information, please look into the article posted. It really kind of breaks down the ICD codes. However, try not to focus on the technicalities of your diagnosis too much. Instead, focus on your symptoms and the severity of your symptoms, right? Coach Molly was touching on it, but it really is the frequency and severity of the symptoms you deal with. And that is key for us when we're looking at where we should be compensated, right? So for PTSD rating criteria, it can rate at 0%, 10%, 30%, 50%, 70%, and 100, right? There's no in-betweens on those. It's either 0, 10, 30, 50, 70, or 100. The average veteran who's service-connected for PTSD is averaged at 70%. The percentages relies heavily on the severity of your symptoms. and the impact your conditions has on your social and occupational day-to-day life, right? Just like Coach Molly was talking about. I want you to remember what you don't tell them, they don't know. And what they don't know can and will get you underrated. It is so critical for us when we're doing a claim for disability for PTSD to be as open and vulnerable as we can be. Do you got anything on that, Coach Molly, or do you want to jump into filing for a disability claim for PTSD?
Yeah, I do want to touch on that because what you said, and I think it's worth repeating, what you don't tell that practitioner, they don't know. They're not mind readers. I think their job would probably be a lot easier if they did have that power. But they don't. You have to tell them. You have to be uncomfortably vulnerable when talking about mental health. And it's usually never easy to talk about mental health, especially if you're going back to a PTSD stressor event, maybe that you've been avoiding talking about for years, or you're embarrassed to talk about it because of how much you've changed, whatever the reason might be. But it's really, really important. If you want to get the most accurate rating for the severity of your condition, that is a necessity, as well as the other evidence that goes along with it, which we'll get into in just a minute here. But it is absolutely pertinent for you to go into that detail. We have tons and tons of resources, both on vaclaimsinsider.com on the blogs. We have amazing YouTube channel. We're on Instagram, TikTok, everything. So definitely tune into those if you're wondering, hey, what are the 31 mental health symptoms? Where can I find that information? We have resources available to you, but also if you do join as an elite member, you get the proprietary information when you become an elite member that goes through each and every one of the 31 mental health symptoms and really in detail, and it gives practical examples. A lot of the 31 mental health symptoms sometimes are in their clinical form, and veterans are like, I don't know if I have this because I don't know what it means.
Right.
So that knowledge and that education is super, super important, especially for mental health. All right. So yes, definitely sign up for that free discovery call or use one of our links to sign up, and make sure that you get connected to a coach so that you can get all of that amazing education that comes with the elite program. All right. So when filing a VA claim, and this is going to be really evidence heavy topic right here. Evidence helps veterans win claims. You'll probably hear Mitch and I say that numerous times within this hour long live. But it's true. But what kind of evidence? What do we mean by evidence? What do you really need to have a successful claim? And the criteria is a current diagnosis of PTSD. It does not have to be from the VA. It does not have to be, from another entity. It needs to have a current diagnosis from a medical provider. Okay. And current meaning 6 to 12 months. So if you got a diagnosis for PTSD, 15 years ago, probably time to go back to a practitioner. Doesn't have to be the same one, but go back to a practitioner, and they'll probably run you through a lot of the DSM-5 criteria, and see if that diagnosis is still current. Mental health is not a linear claim. It's more like a roller coaster. It can change over the years, so it's really important for you to take care of yourself and get that checked out. All right. So current diagnosis is first things first. The PTSD came from a stressor event during your time in service. And then we also have the article that I was talking about with the PTSD stressors and the stressor criteria. Make sure that you check that out because that goes into depth on what the VA is looking for and qualifying you for in terms of that stressor event, what they qualify, what they don't qualify as that stressor event. All right. So understanding that is really important. And then that last piece. So there is a medical link or nexus. You'll hear the term nexus a lot in this process. Connecting your PTSD diagnosis to the stressor event. That's really important. Sometimes when I'm looking at decision letters, it will say, sure, you have a diagnosis and sure you have a stressor event, but the nexus link is missing. So using that decision letter as kind of your guide and as your map can be really, really helpful. I know that I do it all the time as a coach. I'm sure Mitch does as well. But
Absolutely.
understanding what's in there, the VA will outline it. They'll say what you do have in support of the claim and what you were missing. The favorable findings, just quick tip, is going to be where what you do have, the favorable findings for the claim, and then they'll explain at the above that what you were missing. All right. And then to provide all three elements, you'll want to include all medical evidence as well. So if your diagnosis is through the VA, when you are going through the submission on va.gov, it will ask you where can the VA find this evidence. If it's in a private medical physician, make sure to upload that. If it's through the VA, there should be a little checkbox that you can check. Say, hey, I do have this in the VA medical records. It'll drop down, ask you a bunch of questions. What facility was it? When was it? Helping the VA help themselves find that information that's going to support your claim. All right. Statement in support of claims, the 4138 form, to actually share the PTSD stressor in your own words. That is really important. Giving those details. That's also going to help the VA verify that stressor event. To verify the stressful event led to your PTSD, you'll need to file the PTSD stressor form, specifically the 210781. And all of these forms, you can Google them. And they are all public facing. So you can get a hold of them, you can download them. Usually they're going to be in like a PDF form of some sort that you can type into them, print them out, sign them, scan it back in. All right. So I know the word form heavy right now, but this is the evidence that Mitch and I are talking about. That's super, super important. Filing the claim properly. If it's not filed properly, it might delay your claim. The VA might kick it back to you, say, hey, you filed this claim on the wrong form. This is the education part that is really, really important in this process, because it's very particular and it's really hard. I want to validate that this process is really hard. If it was easy for veterans to get what they truly deserved from the VA the first time around, VA Claims Insider wouldn't have to exist. Okay, this education wouldn't have to exist because you just get it right, get what you deserve right off the bat. Okay, there's nitty-gritty details that are really important in order for you to get the benefits that you truly deserve. All right. Once you have turned in these forms and your stressor is confirmed along with your current diagnosis and evidence of a nexus, VA will schedule you for a compensation and pension exam. Mitch, do you want to go over a little bit about why the compensation and pension exam, or the CMP, is so important?
Yeah, so the importance of the compensation and pension exam. Look, this is the most important part of the whole process when you do a disability compensation claim, right? One, knowledge is power, right? You don't ever want to walk into anything and not understand what you're walking into. So understanding what to expect in a compensation and pension exam is going to be critical. It's something you want to be able to advocate for yourself. And by knowing what you're going to be talking about, you'll be able to do it, right? So you want to understand and educate yourself on the rating criteria. Hey, where is it that I should be compensated, right? Talked briefly earlier about that 0 to 100% for compensation. Really understanding where you have identified you should be compensated off of the symptoms and that frequency and duration that you deal with your symptoms, right? Know the evidence that you have in support of that claim, like Coach Molly was saying. Hey, have that evidence there, because those are things you're going to want to talk about too during a compensation and pension exam. You really want to take action and get the support you deserve for your PTSD, right? Experiencing PTSD is not easy, but remember, you're not alone in this fight. There is a whole community of fellow veterans who really walk the path for you, and countless resources available here to help you. If you believe you're experiencing PTSD, don't hesitate to reach out for help. It takes courage to confront these challenges head on, right? But that's something we as veterans know all about. You've served our country, and now it's time for you to ensure you get what you deserve. You served, you deserve. We're going to open this up to question and answer, if that's okay, Coach Molly.
100%. And actually, there's one that goes right along with what you were just talking about, Mitch. And it is how long do I have to? It's from Ricky Cortez. How long do I have to do to be in counseling with the VA before you can take a break to do and have this, or do you have to do this for life? That's a great question. We always say that yes, compensation is definitely, a lot of the goal, but making sure that you're taking care of yourself is equally is important in this. So making sure that you are taking care of yourself, going to the doctor. Brian Risoy says, get your butt to the doctor, get yourself checked out. That goes for medical as well as mental health. Find the treatments that are best suited for you, Ricky. So if you believe that counseling or that talk therapy is helping you with that condition, then really the answer is right there. But if you don't think that it's helping, or maybe even it's hurting because of who you're talking to, maybe communicate with the VA and maybe find a different treatment option that you do believe is going to help you, advocating for yourself throughout this process and throughout life. With these conditions, no one knows your mental health better than you, Ricky. So I can't answer that question for you, but I hope that helped in terms of kind of making that decision. What is best for you? What do you believe is going to help your mental health the most? Continuing that counseling or taking a break and maybe looking at alternate treatments?
Yeah, so we have another one here, Coach Molly. I'm just going to touch on them. Thanks everyone for putting some great questions out here. Anthony Brown put, "Hello, does neurobehavioral effects fall under PTSD?" So, Anthony, this is a great question, and I'll tell you, I was talking with Coach Molly, and when you're looking at mental health, right? It really, for the VA, it all compensates under one umbrella. That's so important for us to understand, right? So, and I'm going to be vulnerably honest here. Like, I'm as a veteran, I might have got wrapped up on the names with specific, diagnoses, right? But if you're service connected for mental health, you're service connected for mental health. I'm by no means a psychologist, but there's a lot of overlapping symptoms when it comes to mental health. And those are definitely things where they can be influenced or aggravate other things. So when you're looking at neurology and you're looking at things you might be dealing with, there can be a connection, right? And it just depends on the unique circumstance for each person there. I personally deal with a lot of different things that affect my mental health. I am service connected for my mental health, but I still get stuck sometimes on the different names. And, I try to go out of my way to use just mental health broadly because that's really how the VA compensates each of us for it. So I hope I did my best to answer that. There is symptoms that can fall and overlap together, sir. Coach
Yeah,
Molly, you got anything on that?
Yeah, and I think Terry really kind of elaborated in the comments, and I want to touch on TBI as well. There are definite overlap in symptoms, especially the physical symptoms as well as cognitive symptoms when it comes to TBI and the way that it is the criteria lays, in the 38 CFR. That's really important to understand in terms of strategy and in terms of making a strategy and going after certain conditions. If you understand that there is an overlap in symptoms, it could be pyramiding. And that's when you can only be, if they're not separated enough, you won't be able to have two ratings for them, TBI as well as PTSD. The only time that I have seen TBI in a mental health condition rated separately is when the physical condition, the physical symptoms were more severe than the cognitive ones. We have an amazing blog on TBI. I'll try and go find the link here in a second, but it really goes over the cognitive versus the physical symptoms and what to look out for. And that one would be a really great read for you, Anthony. Thanks, Terry,
Great.
for bringing that up. But I also wanted to go back too with the mental health kind of as a broad overview. It's really important to note that you can't get a PTSD percentage. Like you can't be, 50% for PTSD as well as, 30% for anxiety. Okay, that's what Mitch was talking about in terms of the broad, the mental health umbrella, if you will. The rating criteria for all mental health conditions is the 31 mental health symptoms. The service connection might be different versus primary, direct service connection, like a PTSD stressor event. Or maybe your migraines are very severe and your migraines are service connected, and your mental health is being caused or aggravated by your migraines. That would be a secondary connection. So that might change, but it's really important to understand that if you're already service connected for a mental health condition at, let's say, 30%, you can't get a PTSD 50% on top of it.
Yeah, so in that case, Coach Molly, right? What they would do is they would go with which one affects you the most,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'd be compensated under whichever one. And that's where, and Coach Molly, I think you're saying it the best. That's where I was really confused a couple of years when I got out, right? Because it's like, hey, you're dealing with multiple different symptoms, or we diagnosed you with these, but you're only compensated for one under the mental health umbrella, right? And that's why I try to just loosely say mental health, right? Because if you're service connected for any of them, you're service connected for mental health.
Yep.
Well said, Coach Molly. So,
Let's see.
Bill Saunders put in here, how is the elite membership? Bill, great question, right? So I'll just touch on a couple of things there with the elite membership. One, I would say, first and foremost, reach out for that discovery call. Okay. Discovery call, you're not committing to anything, but really, like Coach Molly said at the beginning, to see if we're the right fit for you. What's very unique with the elite program is you have a veteran coach throughout the whole process, right? So we really break down the strategy with you after talking with you and educating you on your symptoms, the things you might be trying to claim, understanding that frequency, severity, and duration for compensation purposes. It is you who does submit your claim, right? So we are not VSOs. We're a coach here with you through the process. But when you go through the CMP exams, we do educational classes so you're prepared, right? You can get service connected for something as a disability and unfortunately still get compensated incorrectly, right? And a lot of the times that's off of that frequency and severity of her individual symptoms. So you have a coach throughout the whole process. At the same time, too, we do a lot of live classes, right, in the elite program. There's mental health educational class. There's new client educational class, right? How our elite program works to make it as user friendly as possible for you. And then there's most of the coaches' favorite coffee with the coaches that we do every morning because a lot of us coaches come together and we just open it up for conversations like me and Coach Molly are having with everyone today. So those are really the things that are provided in the elite program. If you have questions on it, I strongly encourage reach out, do the discovery call.
Yep. And what I want to touch on with coffee with the coaches is that's where you really feel the community aspect of this. Yes, we are all virtual. Yes, you do have to use Zoom and other technical things, which can be a struggle, but it's worth it because you get to see other veterans and hear other veteran stories that are very, very similar maybe to yours. You're not doing this alone, and you don't have to do this alone. That's exactly why Brian Reese created VA Claims Insider. He saw a need in the veteran community for the education around this entire process because it's hard and it's frustrating, and a lot of veterans give up, and then they find VA Claims Insider and they give us a shot, and they're like, wow, I'm not the only one that has these questions. I'm not the only one that has wanted to put my decision letter through the shredder or burn it in the fire because I'm so angry. I'm not the only one. And that's really the powerful thing about the classes, the live classes, whether it be the orientation class that you jump into when you first sign up, whether it be coffee with the coaches, or maybe that CMP exam education or that mental health education class. We have specialized classes to meet you where you are in the process all along the way.
I always like to say when I self-reflect when it comes to disability compensations, it's the irony is you really only know what you know, right? And a lot of the times we don't know we can do certain things. And that's where I'm forever grateful with being part of VA Claims Insider is truly that education, right? Because if I could leave one thing with everybody today, in the end, when you're going through a disability compensation, you really have to be your own advocate, right? You have to be able to speak to your symptoms, your frequency and duration, no matter what the disability compensation is. And the only way to truly understand that is to educate yourself, right? And that's what I'm the most proud of here. Yeah, we're a team. We're all here together to continue to fight and help for veterans. But it's really educating. That iron sharpens iron. So we really do only know what we know. And I know I'm living proof. I'm sure a lot of you are out there in your families. But guess what? We're here now with technology, right? And we're all coming together and trying to bring this community to where we can get those entitlements we all really deserve. Brian says it best with "you serve, you deserve," but I love it. It's true.
It is empowering you to really lean into that, remembering your why. You proudly served your country in anything that you sustained injury wise in service while you were bravely serving. You deserve to be compensated for. End all be all. You served, you deserve. And that's why I love it's just such a simple saying that Brian has, but it really hits home for a lot of veterans, especially if you've been on the edge of, do I want to put in a claim? Do I deserve to be compensated for this injury, for this mental health claim? I believe that the answer is absolutely. But it's no one should care more about your VA claims than you. Not the VA, not VA Claims Insider, not your VSO if you're working with one. Um, no one should care more about your claim than you, because no one knows what you went through when you were serving and what you're going through currently better than you do.
Love it, Coach Molly. So Andrew James put a question in the chat on here. Andrew James put, using a great VSO for BDD claim. She is great. However, I can't see anything she has submitted for claims or my medical records. Is there any way? Well, I'll tell you, Mr. James, I went through the BDD program. I think it's phenomenal. But with your VSO, right, you definitely want to reach out to them and make sure you know what's being submitted. That's the best advice I can truly give you. When you go on to like va.gov and you're looking, you're going to see, claims pending, but you're not going to be able to go in depth and see till you get a decision letter in the evidence section what was all there. But you can reach out to your VSO and make sure you're on the same page there. They have access to your stuff, they can see, and they know what was submitted. So I would definitely just encourage you. I think you're thinking along the same ways, but I would want to know in hindsight, if it was me, what was being submitted as that medical evidence. I hope that helps, but really reach out to your VSO.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, you can absolutely go on va.gov and look at your pending claims. I would I would say don't get too caught up on the codes. Sometimes va.gov is not the most user friendly site out there. So just use that search bar if you're looking for something in particular on that site. I definitely encourage you to use that search bar up at the upper right hand corner to either look for how do I submit an increase. It'll come up with the forms, and it really can be helpful as long as you know how to navigate it. And that goes for claims that are pending, and also submitting claims and just general information on there. But yes, be your own advocate. You need to know what claims are pending right now, because then when a CMP exam comes around, you don't want to be questioning, I have no idea what condition the CMP exam is for, because that's going to make it really hard for you to properly educate yourself prior to that CMP exam. If you go in blind to that CMP exam, not even knowing what condition it's for, then it's going to be it might really spike your anxiety, and you won't be able to educate yourself prior to.
Well, and a lot of times in those situations, right, we minimize. because you're
Mhm.
expecting one thing and now you're talking about something else and you're just
Yeah,
not
that
sure.
curveball.
So you don't want to mislead or give, bad intentions. I don't think anyone wants to, right? So then a lot of times in those situations, we can be like, well, yeah, but I'm good. Well, maybe that's not the case and you just didn't know when you were caught off guard, right? So that natural reaction, when we're out in an uncomfortable situation, it's not easy to talk about the things we deal with, right? Like, let's be real. I walk out of the room into my family and my kids still think I'm Superman, right? But I'm still dealing with all these things. And knowing always be on top of what you have there and being prepared is going to be key so you can speak to your truths in there. What else? These are some great questions
These
today.
are. I'm looking for, I thought I saw another one about DBQs, which while we're talking about CMP exams would be a fantastic time. If you find it before I do, but it was something along the lines of what is the importance of DBQs? There it is. Perfect. So what is the importance of a DBQ, especially for PTSD, anxiety, depression claims? So DBQ is a disability benefit questionnaire, which is typically filled out in the CMP exam. Now you can, DBQ forms can be found online and filled out by your medical professional or provider um, for certain conditions. But disability benefit questionnaires are super important because it's the VA actually evaluates that particular condition. So they are very important to know what they're going to ask you, and also kind of going off of making sure you know what condition they're evaluating. This is kind of a DBQ because you can get a hold of DBQs online. They're public facing. You can actually search. Maybe you're going in for a knee exam. Knee, a VA knee DBQ, and you can actually pull up, and you're gonna get the DBQ that provider is going to be filling out. So it's kind of like having the test prior to actually taking the test. So it can really help you educate and understand and set those expectations. Hey, this is what they're going to ask of me in this CMP exam. So I think they're an amazing tool on educating you prior to these evaluations.
And having that DBQ too, right? The is document that frequency and severity, right? Which is key for the compensation. So it does make you more informative without a doubt, but it also gives you more confidence too, knowing when it comes to being able to advocate in there, just like Coach Molly said. So a disability benefits questionnaire is phenomenal for us as veterans to understand what is being expected of that CMP examiner that day.
Great, great question. Lance, I wanted to direct you to a really good resource that I think might answer your question a little bit better than I'll be able to do on here in this format. But the stressor criteria is going to be what I would highly, highly recommend that you look at when you're trying to figure out what would be considered PTSD and what is not, and the validity of that stressor that you're asking about. So definitely, definitely check out that stressor criteria that the VA is going to be using to evaluate, and that might clarify it. But the important thing is that yes, absolutely, training accidents. It does not have to be in combat. Remember, training accidents oftentimes do qualify under the PTSD stressor criteria.
There's there's some great questions being put in here, Coach Molly. Um, so I know we're kind of still talking on the DBQs here, but Andrew James put, thanks for CMP exam. Will they use the DBQ or like a synthesized version of it, or will they wing it? Right. So Andrew, just to be clear, I think, I'm not a psychologist, right? So I have done the exam, but when they do it, I think sometimes, like what I believe at the time is they took notes, right? While they were doing the exam with me. And once again, that's where it's really important for us to know what's on that DBQ, right? So we're making sure to talk about the things that are important to us that get captured, right? But ultimately, in the end, they're being asked to fill out a disability benefits questionnaire. So however they're doing it in that exam, that's still the form that's getting filled out and turned back into the VA. right? So as a guide, it is still key for you when you're in the CMP exam. They each might have their own different ways, with every doctor on how they actually document things. And I don't
Yeah.
know that there's a wrong or a right, but you do know what needs to be filled out in the end.
Yep. I agree. I agree. Yeah, and Andrew asks, just a clarification. He's downloaded all the DBQs. Fantastic. He's educating himself prior to, and apart from the mental health hearing I claims, there are still about 20 plus DBQs, which seem like a large amount for a big exam. So I do want to touch on this as well. Is in my opinion, there is absolutely a a risk of you putting in too many claims and that really being hard for one you to educate yourself because you have so many irons in the fire that it's hard to really focus in and give that claim the education and the knowledge that it truly deserves. And that's for you as well as the VA, and it could also take longer. So if you throw 20 plus claims at the wall just to see what sticks, that might cause issue on the VA end because they have to then rate all of those conditions, bring you in for the CMP exams, and can be a really long, drawn out process. But then it also is hindering your focus. And if the VA decides to kind of lump all of those together, you might not have the time necessary in that CMP exam to go into the detail that's necessary in order for you to get the correct percentage or the service connection even for that condition. And that's what we're talking about: the strategy, the education, and the medical evidence. If you're throwing claims at the wall with no strategy, no knowledge on the rating criteria, and no evidence, that's oftentimes when we see those quick denials or those long drawn out denials, even worse from the VA. The strategy is important as well as the education and the medical evidence.
Great, great point, Coach Molly. Another thing, just overall, just some things I'm seeing in the conversations here is, you know, can you file a claim for PTSD, right? Even though it's been 10 or 15 years, right? Is there a time, to be short and sweet, the answer is no, the answer is yes, you can, right? Sometimes we create a lot of obstacles and we go, hey, some people are putting in here, and I'll use myself as an example, right? But a lot of times you don't know some of the things you're even dealing with, right? You're getting up every day, you're putting your best foot forward, you're trying to deal with the cards life's throwing at you, you know, and all of a sudden you hit that wall. And then all of a sudden things that are coming. So everybody is in certain, in different situations, right? Not certain, but different situations. And for a lot of veterans, the suck it up and drive on is real, right? It's something we don't always talk about, but if you feel like you're dealing with mental health, don't create an obstacle there that might not be there, right? And that's something where I would strongly encourage, because I feel like the biggest hypocrite talking to everybody, I was that veteran, right? I didn't go to mental health. I looked down on some things there, and I'm here today. I was wrong, right? It's not easy to say we were wrong, but I was. And just because I wasn't going, I should have been talking with somebody. And that's just being truthful. So if time has elapsed in there, hey, I strongly encourage you, reach out, talk with, our discovery call, see if we're a good fit. And, if you don't, I still strongly encourage you. Go talk to someone if you know that's a service connected disability, file that claim, right? You've identified it now, do something.
Act. Yep, the time is now. I began this entire live saying that VA Claims Insider comes into your life when you need it most. And the same goes for this education. Maybe you didn't know we existed. Maybe you didn't, know that VA Claims Insider had all of these free resources that you could use on YouTube, on social media, on our blog. Now you do. So act on it. Maybe add vaclaimsinsider.com and pin it to your page so that when you go back, you don't have to say, "Oh, what was the name of that company again?" Kind of like the crisis line. Have it there so when you are ready to take action on your claims and get what you truly deserve, It's right there. Just click on the link and it's all right there. You can sign up. You can get a discovery call. You can get access to the blog. We also have an amazing VA calculator because we all know that that's uh,
The
a
VA
hurdle
now.
sometimes. With that VA math, we all feel like we're back in school learning long division again. But there's so many good resources on vaclaimsinsider.com. So definitely go there and just start it. So when you are ready, if you're not ready today, you can go and sign up or utilize the resources. All right. That's why we do these lives. We want you guys to know what's available to you in terms of education, in terms of resources, and we want to be that voice of reason to say that you served and you deserve. And that brings up a great point. Brian also has a book, that you served, you deserve it, second edition, now available for order on Amazon today. You can also download a free copy of the book. There we go. And there's the link right there. Beat me to it.
Magic.
Magic. Voila. Feel like Vanna White. So definitely utilize these resources. Reach out to our veteran ambassadors. They are waiting to talk to you. They are just as passionate, if not more, I would say, than Mitch and I. We don't, we do this job because we want to serve this community. We do. Either we're a military spouse, a veteran, have a family member, or just want to serve in our own way and serve this community that has bravely served our country. All right, reach out.
I
Reach
know
out to
we've
the
talked. I know we, Coach Molly. I know we've put out a lot of things today with everybody's with mental health and looking at claims and trying to give as much information as we can to everybody. We're getting ready to wrap this up here. We got about 2 minutes left. But what I would like to share with all of you is this, right? This is 100% about you. It's not about anyone else but you, right? And when it comes to disability compensation, it's not fun. It's not easy, right? But once we start knowing things, I personally feel like now the responsibility is on me to act on those, right? So if we left just one thing informative to you today by you taking time here that can help you, that means the world to me. If you have questions, talk with a VSO, right? If we're not a fit for you, but we're really here for you. We are here for you. We're a community of coaches that are here for you as veterans. I appreciate your time, Coach Molly. I'll let you close us out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for spending this Wednesday with us. If you are interested in any other topics, make sure to check out our resources. But we also have another Facebook Live coming up. So make sure to tune in every Wednesday for Facebook Lives. All right. Have a fantastic day, and we hope to hear from all of you soon.
Happy Wednesday.